Shadow Hack. Chapter 771, Destroying the Man-Eating Tree Spirit. In truth, Li Yunmu greatly desired to completely destroy the forest, but he was afraid that if everything was destroyed, the exit would also vanish. Then their last hope of returning to the western region would be destroyed. Li Yunmu didn't dare to take such a risk casually, so he tried to locate the exit first. If Yuan Biao had really found it, then the situation looked pretty good for them. However, when Li Yunmu reached the place where the ancient secret method was guiding him, he couldn't even see the shadow of Yuan Biao. That was strange. Yuan Biao wouldn't trick him, so something unexpected had to have happened. While he was pondering over, he caught sight of movement under his feet. The branches growing like thorns and thistles suddenly coiled around his feet and did their utmost to drag him away. It was quite likely then that Yuan Biao was dragged away, but fortunately, she was a spirit, so Li Yunmu only needed to take out the secret ancient method and she would return inside it. Because of the roots, Li Yunmu soon sensed the monster's location. "You damned tree spirit!" A hint of coldness flashed in his gaze, and the devil-punishing sword chopped the thorns and thistles to free him. The vine shrank afterwards, and Li Yunmu chased after it until he found the exit Yuan Biao had notified him about. It was protected by an enormous tree spirit. Its body was gigantic, and countless vines twisted around it, one of which was trapping Yuan Biao. Li Yunmu was slightly startled upon seeing her. Just a moment ago, he had used the ancient secret method to collect her back. Could it be that if someone was entangled by the tree spirit, that technique couldn't be used? That tree spirit's countless vines suddenly took the initiative to attack Li Yunmu. He was extremely fast and evaded them, then he used transformation to fade away, so it was impossible for them to catch him. By relying on the ability to become invisible, Li Yunmu approached the vine holding Yuan Biao. The instant he showed himself, the devil-punishing sword in his hand chopped through the vine, and Yuan Biao fell into Li Yunmu's embrace. Li Yunmu then operated the ancient secret method to turn Yuan Biao into a spirit and collected her into the book. It would be better if he was by himself in such a dangerous region. There was no need for Yuan Biao to face the same danger. It wasn't his way of doing things. Li Yunmu took a deep breath. Without a burden like Yuan Biao, he could quickly destroy the tree spirit. The countless vines of the tree spirit rushed to hit Li Yunmu, and the devil-punishing sword in his hand flickered with golden light, which made all those vines shrink back. The tree as enormous as the sky had two large eyes which were constantly blinking and a mouth issuing ghost-like wails and wolf-like howls. Li Yunmu narrowed his eyes and calmly observed the tree spirit not far from him. He then said with complete calm, "So your weak point was your body. Are you afraid of the devil-punishing sword in my hand?" Li Yunmu hadn't finished speaking when the tree spirit burst out with its full strength. The countless vines attacked, but the devil-punishing sword flickered with golden light once more and stopped them in their tracks. Then, the devil-punishing sword stabbed one of the tree spirit's large eyes. Endless black blood flowed out and dyed the devil-punishing sword. Li Yunmu was somewhat astonished to see that this devil-punishing sword surprisingly absorbed the black blood. He took a deep breath and indifferently said, "Has the tree spirit already been destroyed?" He collected the devil-punishing sword, and an enormous explosion happened in the tree spirit's body. Boom! After the loud sound, Li Yunmu quickly used the metal body transformation to avoid the explosion. Repulsive! This tree spirit is really crafty. It wanted to take me down with it while facing death's door. After the explosion of the tree spirit, Li Yunmu's eyes filled with shock. Countless broken body parts had fallen everywhere. It seemed like the tree spirit had eaten many people and was in the process of digesting them when it met Yuan Biao. Upon seeing the gory sight, Li Yunmu almost vomited. He forced himself to endure it, however. Killing the tree spirit could be regarded as getting rid of evil. Just a moment ago, it had even wanted to swallow Yuan Biao. However, since there was no human presence in her body, it chose to treat her as a bait. It wanted to use her human appearance to attract its prey. After thinking about it, Li Yunmyu heaved a sigh of relief and went to observe the exit that was not far away from him. It was the same as the entrance he saw when he entered the eastern domain for the first time. There was a spatial vortex constantly spiraling as if it was a time travel door. Li Yunmyu stepped inside and finally returned to Scandinavia. After all they had experienced, he intended to let Yuan Biao and Ling Yuan have a proper rest inside the ancient secret method. Returning to Land of Ice felt like coming back to a past lifetime. Since he went from there to Central Region's desert to Eastern Domain's ancient lands, then again to the northern parts Land of Ice, even he didn't know how much time had passed. Perhaps he could have returned to Scandinavia long ago if he hadn't needed to recover his cultivation. Right then, however, he had already recovered his strength. Upon returning to Scandinavia, his confidence also increased greatly. At least he wouldn't Zeus leverage to use against him. When Li Yunmyu reached the Rainbow Bridge, Heimdall looked at him with some shock. You have returned alive from the Eastern Domain?" he asked with a hint of incredulity in his voice. "What? Someone said I died in the Eastern Domain?" "No, right. When you were in the Central Region, helping to unite the two poles of morning and evening, we all heard that you lost your cultivation, which also reached Zeus. He then allied with the Southern Region's Heavenly Eight to attack Scandinavia. In the end though, Scandinavia and Heavenly Gods Council joined hands, and the Eight were forced to retreat back to their lands." Li Yunmyu smiled. "So many things happened while I wasn't here. Seems like you guys worked hard. I will send you off to the palace. Princess and the others are waiting for you," Heimdall promptly said. Li Yunmyu nodded and stood on the Rainbow Bridge platform. Instantly, he returned to the palace. His return filled everyone with great excitement. "Princess, Li Yunmyu has returned." Chapter 772, False News. When Brunhilde heard the news, she promptly called over Athena. Both of them left what they had been doing and madly rushed toward the palace. Li Yunmyu was their husband, so of course they felt excited after hearing that he had returned. Athena had made great contributions in the battle against the Eight just recently, for which she wanted to get credit from Li Yunmyu. She believed that he had great prospects, even if he had lost his strength for the time being. He would certainly find some way to recover his strength. When Brunhilde arrived at the entrance to the palace, she saw Li Yunmyu having returned safely, and her heart began to thump loudly. Have you been busy? This old wife of yours thinks greatly of you," she shouted out loudly. Brunhilde pounced into Li Yunmyu's embrace, and he smiled slightly at her. "Never mind that. Haven't I returned safely?" Athena watched them from the side while feeling multitudes of emotions in her heart. Brunhilde suddenly stepped away from Li Yunmyu and said to Athena, "You also hug him. Haven't you been missing him a lot too?" Brunhilde's words left Li Yunmyu incomparably surprised. He clearly remembered that Brunhilde was extremely jealous before, so how could she have become so magnanimous? Whether for good or bad, didn't she view Athena as a thorn in her side? It was actually the reason why he didn't take out Ling Yuan and Yuan Biao of the ancient secret method. If he did so, she would find out that he had 4 wives and would probably stab him with her spear. Athena tightly hugged Li Yunmyu and then said, "We still believe that you." Li Yunmyu smiled. "I heard that you joined hands to defeat the Eight." Clearly Heavenly Gods Council had allied with the Eight, then changed their allegiance to Scandinavia, and the only person who could have achieved it is you, wisdom goddess Athena. Athena's complexion turned a little red, but she replied with absolute calm. "Yes. I realized that Heavenly Gods Council and Scandinavia were somewhat weaker, so if they didn't join hands to deal with the Eight, then after Scandinavia was destroyed, Heavenly Gods Council would also be wiped out. Since I am the link between Scandinavia and Heavenly Gods Council, I knew I had to tell my father Zeus about the pros and cons of his actions." Li Yunmyu nodded. Athena was a very intelligent woman, and he wasn't used to that. At the time he had accepted her as a concubine because he was following the system's suggestions. However, although that choice showed up to have been a good one, but he felt somewhat restless and nervous in his heart. "How is Lord Father Odin? I happen to have something to ask him," he suddenly said. Brunhilde led Li Yunmu to meet with Odin, who was extremely excited to see him. Odin had placed all hopes on Li Yunmu. His return was tantamount to a declaration to the entire Western world that their king had returned. "Thou hath finally returned. Scandinavia has hope again." Li Yunmu turned to Brunhilde. "Spread the news of my return and let the whole world know that I am seriously injured. I want to see who dares to be unloyal to Scandinavia. Many people should want to kill me." He then shifted his gaze to Athena and said, "I also want to see whether your father will give face to his daughter and me. If he still has evil intentions to attack Scandinavia, then don't blame me for not giving any face to him." Athena didn't dare to say anything in front of Li Yunmu's cold gaze, and she hemmed and hawed before nodding. Yes. Since she had already married Li Yunmu, she would naturally follow him in all his decisions. If her father really had some suicidal intentions, she wouldn't stop him. Brunhilde suddenly said to Li Yunmu, "Once Zeus learns about your return, he shouldn't come to cause trouble for Scandinavia." The talk between Athena and him should have had some weight. Li Yunmu smiled. "If he learned that I returned, then perhaps he might have some apprehensions, but what if I have returned with serious injury, then what? Scandinavia wouldn't have anyone to save the situation. As the leader of Heavenly God's Council, do you think that he wouldn't use such an opportunity to attack?" Brunhilde nodded, then gave a profound look to Athena and said, "But this isn't related to Athena, so you shouldn't make things difficult for her." Li Yunmu calmly looked at her. "Be at ease. Athena, I will have to wrong you for a few days. Elder brother Thor, please keep a careful watch over her, don't allow her to pass any information to Zeus, since it would end up harming all of us." Thor had been dissatisfied with Athena since a long time ago. Although last time she had helped Scandinavia get out of trouble, he had never felt happy about her remaining in Scandinavia. After all, it was like living with a mole planted in their midst by Heavenly God's Council. Athena saw that Li Yunmu was intending to put her under house arrest and said, "Li Yunmu, what do you mean by this? If my father really harbored any ill intentions towards Scandinavia, then he would have used the opportunity to attack it long ago. There shouldn't have been a reason to wait until now. Since he didn't attack when you weren't present, then after you returned, he would definitely not attack. He also knows the risks." Li Yunmu shook his head. "Your logic appears to be upside down. If I hadn't returned, then your father definitely wouldn't dare to take the initiative to attack. In case I returned suddenly and saw him attacking Scandinavia, do you think I would let him go? But if he heard that I returned with serious injuries and don't pose the slightest threat toward him? Imagine yourself in his place, would you not come to find trouble with Scandinavia?" Li Yunmu's words left Athena dumbfounded. Under Thor's watchful eyes, she would be unable to send any information to Zeus. Almost all powers heard the news about Li Yunmu being seriously injured after Brunhilde secretly spread the word. It made them feel even more threatened by the Eastern Domain, that mysterious region. At that moment, the eight were recuperating from their injuries. Last time, they had completely collapsed under the joint attack of Scandinavian God Council and Heavenly God's Council. In their condition, even if they heard the news about Li Yunmu's injury, they didn't have any thoughts to attack Scandinavia. Unlike them, however, when Heavenly God's Council's Zeus heard it, he smiled crazily and burst out laughing. "Li Yunmu is seriously injured. This is a great opportunity for our Heavenly God's Council." Chapter 773, The Water Seal. Previously, I had always been scared that once he returns and sees that Scandinavia has been destroyed, our Heavenly God's Council will also suffer a calamity. But now, there's no need to be afraid. He has received serious injuries, which means that he doesn't have any combat strength. But Athena is still in their hands. Will you risk her life? It was an opportunity which came once in a blue moon, so they had to choose between destroying Scandinavia and protecting Athena. There was no way to get both things. From the day she was born in Heavenly God's council, she should have been prepared to sacrifice her life for Olympus at any time, Zeus said callously. His words made Athena's mother Hera feel a hint of despair, and she grew furious. I don't agree to use my daughter's life in exchange for starting this war. Moreover, you don't even know whether this intelligence is real or not. If Li Yunmu isn't injured, you will be courting death by attacking Scandinavia. Hera's words startled Zeus, and he hesitated. If she was right, there might be a ploy set up by someone in the background. In that case, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. The whole Heavenly God's council might end up destroyed, let alone Athena. It was an extremely large risk. We feel that your worries are unnecessary. It would be better if we just went to ask Kangyu Sect. Their information has always been correct. This idea is pretty good. Let's go, we will inquire with the Kangyu Sect whether this news is true or not. In Sand City of Two Poles of morning and evening, the three Egyptian gods also received the news of Li Yunmu's return as well as that he was seriously injured. Li Yunmu has returned from the eastern domain with serious injuries, so I fear that Scandinavia will be in imminent danger, Osiris said with some hesitation in his voice. Although the 8 have been forced to return to the southern region, it's hard for them to escape Heavenly God's Council and Kangyu Sect. How about we go assist Li Yunmu? After all, he is the benefactor of our 2 poles of morning and evening. Ra was silent for a moment before saying, this matter is really somewhat difficult. Now that you mention it, Li Yunmu is indeed our benefactor. If we don't help him, then we truly couldn't justify it. But our relationship with Heavenly God's Council is pretty good. Anything we do will offend one of the sides, so I think we should bide our time for the moment. Bide our time again? We didn't participate last time, which caused our impression in Scandinavia's eyes to plummet. If this matter reaches Li Yunmu's ears, how exactly will he view our 2 poles of morning and evening? Geb said with a frown. Horus nodded at his words. I also feel that Geb is correct. If we don't help Scandinavia, our image will fall to rock bottom in Li Yunmu's eyes. If Heavenly God's Council gets defeated and we still continue to bide our time, it is highly possible that we will attract Li Yunmu's wrath. Ra was still hesitant, however. What should he do? The choice was really difficult. He needed to ponder over it for a while. When the people of Kangyu Sect heard the news, all of them believed it was false. Since they specialized in gathering intelligence, each and every bit of knowledge which they couldn't verify wouldn't be taken seriously. Yet there was someone among them who was unable to contain his desire to take revenge on Li Yunmu. Don't be impulsive. If the news is false, then you would be courting death. Why are you afraid of him? You all are afraid because he is your business, but this old man isn't. If you are afraid, then you can keep hiding here. I will go kill him myself. I, Cass, am not afraid of him. From the day he destroyed my world, the only thing I can think of is taking revenge. After Cass finished speaking, he left Kangyu Sect. There were some people who wanted to stop him, but they were ordered to not interfere by the sect master. Don't stop him, let him go. Consider it as him going to confirm the news for Kangyu Sect. If he returns safely, that will prove that Li Yunmu is really seriously injured. If he doesn't return, that will illustrate that Li Yunmu isn't injured. All the members of Kangyu Sect knelt toward the sect master and said, Sect master is wise. Cass had stepped on the path of vengeance alone, and even if it was filled with hardships, he would still continue walking it. The reason he had come to the origin world was very simple: to kill Li Yunmu. Because of that, he couldn't just sit around doing nothing. After Li Yunmu spread the news, there seemed to be no movements in the entire origin world, including Zeus, whom he had never trusted. Everyone was extremely cautious, which left Li Yunmu puzzled. He wasn't used to it. In any case, he had to ask Odin about some other matter. Lord Father Odin, Do you know where the water seal is? Odin's complexion changed upon hearing his words. Water seal was the secret of Scandinavia, so how did Li Yunmu know about it? He couldn't help but ask with some astonishment, "Don't tell me that my friend has informed thou about it." "That's right. Only after removing the seals will he return to the origin world," Li Yunmu calmly replied. Odin narrowed his eyes, and after a moment of hesitation, he said, "I need to talk with my friend." The system saw that Odin didn't seem to have full confidence in Li Yunmu. After all, the seal was the greatest secret of Scandinavia, so he had to be seafool about it. Without any alternatives, Li Yunmu could only hand over the situation to the system. It was silent for a moment before saying, "Odin, my host's words are correct. Only by undoing the 5 seals of the origin world will I return. We've already opened the fire seal, so only 4 seals remain. Moreover, these seals imply the return of your respective master gods." Odin grew happy upon hearing the system's words. "What did you say? Our Scandinavia's master god can return?" "That's right. Therefore, you need to tell the secret of the water seal to my host. He can remove the seal." Odin took a deep breath and said, "That's good. I can tell him the region where the water seal is located, but it is protected by a divine beast. I fear that it will be somewhat difficult to deal with it. You don't need to worry about it. You only need to tell him about the location of the water seal." Odin nodded, then told the location and how to get there. Li Yunmu used the time before anyone with ill intentions toward Scandinavia arrived to go to the seal. Since he had defeated the Black Kylan next to the fire seal, he did not fear the divine beast protecting the water seal. A lot of snow was drifting in the region of the seal. It seemed like a blizzard was about to start. Li Yunmu's feet sank into the snow with each step, which resulted in a creaking sound. According to what Odin said, he was right next to the seal. Chapter 774, Strange Divine Beast. The surroundings of the location of the seal were very simple and ordinary. Snowflakes, which filled the entire sky, were slowly drifting down, giving the land a dignified appearance. Li Yunmu arrived at the location of seal, feeling more or less the same as when he had arrived at the location of the fire seal in the ancient lands. The only difference was that there was a warm presence around the fire seal, while Li Yunmu was feeling ice cold right then. He had come to the location of the seal alone, without calling for anyone's help. That way, he could deal with the guardian divine or devil beast freely. If he had brought anyone over, he would have needed to care and worry about their safety. It would distract him, making him lose focus while dealing with the ancient divine or devil beast. Li Yunmu took a deep breath and suddenly sensed that it was extremely cold in the cave where the seal was located. A stream of air was pressing toward him. It didn't seem to have come from the ice outside, however. Instead, it felt more like a breath of air exhaled by a living organism. When Li Yunmu sensed the presence of a strange power within it, he noticed it flowing from a divine beast guarding the seal. Its body was completely concealed under the white snowflakes, but from the shape of the body, it appeared to be a lion. Was it the guardian beast of the water seal? Who would have expected that it would be a snow lion? The snow lion suddenly broke out of his cocoon and came out. It opened its bloody mouth and pounced on Li Yunmu. Strangely, the snow lion didn't seem like a living creature, but more like an illusion, and Li Yunmu made a calculated guess. Could it be that this isn't the guardian divine beast of this seal, but just a substitute? Inside his body, the system praised him. "I hadn't expected that after experiencing so many things, you would finally become intelligent. This really is a substitute? Then what about the ancient beast who was supposed to guard this seal? Could it be that I don't need to fight any guardian beast here?" The system shook its head. "I am also not clear about this, but that snow lion was definitely created by a divine beast. If you believe that just by defeating this snow lion you can open the seal, you're expecting this to be too simple." Li Yunmu couldn't help but nod after hearing the system's words. He then began to search for the presence of the guardian divine beast, relying on his absolute perception. Suddenly, he felt a presence quickly approaching him. His eyes went wide, and he quickly said to the system, "Is that what you were talking about?" A creature resembling a Malu appeared in front of them, but its external appearance was quite strange. Li Yunmyo couldn't understand how could such a creature survive in the land of ice. The system suddenly reminded him, "Although I am not very clear about this, you must be extremely careful. Don't let any accident happen. What you must do is to protect yourself first." Li Yunmyo nodded. "I understand. But this divine beast seems to be different from the Black Kylan. Is it possible that this creature is the legendary Malu?" The system was slightly startled. "No, it's just another illusion created by that divine beast. It isn't the real divine beast. Repulsive, this guy has really concealed itself deeply." Li Yunmyo quickly destroyed the snow lion and Malu. They turned into a mass of smoke, but just as the system had said, the seal still didn't show any signs of opening. Where exactly is the divine beast? Li Yunmyo searched through the ice cave once more, but still couldn't find any traces of the divine beast. Finally, it was the system who detected its location. When Li Yunmyo looked at the divine beast, he was startled. "What is that?" The divine beast's body was completely covered in ice and its appearance couldn't be seen. Upon observing it, the system paused for a moment. The divine beast seemed to be attempting to shift its body and leave the location of the water seal. "It seems to be trapped." Li Yunmyo was startled. Trapped by who? Shouldn't the divine beast supposed to be guarding the seal? How could it be trapped suddenly? Seeing the suspicious look on Li Yunmyo's face, the system said, "It is simply perfect that it is bound up. We should quickly kill it, and the seal will open up." The system's words startled Li Yunmyo. He knew that it was ruthless since the start, but he didn't expect that it wouldn't even let a divine beast go. Previously, he had to stake his all to defeat the Black Kylan, or else the fire seal wouldn't have opened. But right then, when he arrived at the water seal, he encountered an enemy who could be easily killed, and Li Yunmyo was caught somewhat off guard. "It doesn't seem like it has any intention of staying here to guard the seal though, so wouldn't it be better to just let it go? Release it? As things stand, if we release it, we won't be able to open that seal." Li Yunmyo frowned. "Isn't it that as long as the divine beast leaves, we will have the opportunity to open the seal? Then what's the problem here?" The system paused for a moment before saying, "This divine beast is different from other creatures. It seems to have already fused with the land of ice. If we release it, its influence may help us eliminate the seal, but it's better to be safe than sorry." The system's words made Li Yunmyo take a deep breath. He suddenly couldn't bear it, but how many divine beasts had already died in his hands? One more wouldn't make any difference. Li Yunmyo hardened his heart and took out the god-slaughtering sword. "I will assist you in opening the seal, but you mustn't forget my favor," he said coldly. Upon hearing Li Yunmyo's words, the system's voice also turned ice-cold. "Don't worry, as long as you can help me return to the origin world, I won't treat you unfairly." Li Yunmyo fiercely stabbed the god-slaughtering sword into the divine beast. It shrieked in powerless anger. Without even having the opportunity to battle against Li Yunmyo, it lost its head once he shifted his blade. The divine beast perished, and its body also gradually disappeared. In front of Li Yunmyo's eyes, it turned into water, and the water seal suddenly began to collapse. Cracks appeared on the frozen ice on which the water seal was lying, following which it completely shattered. The seal's gate was opened, and Li Yunmyo quickly grabbed it. Underneath it was an unfathomably deep abyss. After a quick look at it, Li Yunmyo began to lose his mind. Inside his body, the system was constantly speaking to him. "Stabilize yourself, you cannot die. You must help me open all the seals first." Chapter 775, A Mortal Enemy. The system's words brought Li Yunmyo back to his senses. He pushed the gate wider while sensing a threatening cold presence inside. He couldn't help but take a deep breath upon seeing it, then he suddenly leapt down. After entering the gate, the tip of his feet fell upon an overhanging cliff. After Li Yunmu entered the Water Seal's gate, he discovered that his new surroundings were different from those in the Fire Seal. They were in a complete mess, and at the center, there was a very special spell formation. Similar to how it was with the Fire Seal, he had to open the spell formation to obtain the black box before he could leave. Based on his last time's experience in opening the Fire Seal, Li Yunmu began to search for some clues and soon found marks on the wall. "This is." Li Yunmu narrowed his eyes and calmly said, "This is Scandinavia's legend." Inside his body, the system also spoke up. Every region's seal is closely linked to the master god of that region. Do you remember the person about whom the mural in the Fire Seal was talking about? Li Yunmu nodded. It was Kangyu. So it could be said that Kangyu is the master god of ancient lands. Then the master god of Land of Ice, this giant, why does he resemble Odin so much? Odin is only the king of the numerous gods in Land of Ice, but isn't their master god. The master god of Scandinavia is Ymir, who is also snow giant. The snow giants of Scandinavia all resemble each other, so it is very hard to differentiate between them. This time, I don't know where we should start nor where exactly we could find the seal. Li Yunmu searched inside the cave for a long time, because only after obtaining the seal could he leave the spell formation. Otherwise he would be eternally trapped inside it. I have already forgotten about the records of Ymir. After being dormant for so long, many of my memories have started to become hazy. Seems like this isn't related to opening the seal. While talking, Li Yunmu began to thump against the walls of the cave in hopes to discover some clues. As expected, he soon found the mechanism to trigger the spell formation. Li Yunmu smiled slightly and said, "In the end, I still found it. I have already opened 2 seals, so shouldn't you give me some reward?" The system paused for a moment, then suddenly spoke up in an alert tone, "There seems to be an abnormal presence in Scandinavia. It doesn't belong to a person of the origin world, but is really similar to yours. He must have come from Earth too." "Presence? What do you mean?" Li Yunmu frowned, then his eyes lit up as if he had realized something. "Could it be that someone who wants to get rid of me has come? Just perfect, I also want to see who exactly he is. Why does he want to get a hold of me?" Li Yunmu operated the mechanism, and the spell formation seal was immediately opened. At the center of it, there was another black box as he had expected. Li Yunmu knew that the black box contained the secrets related to the system, so he carefully stored it in the system's place, then left the center of the spell formation. With a su sound, he returned to the gate to Scandinavia. He really wanted to know who exactly was the person who wanted to deal with him. Furthermore, he had come from Earth, so he really was asking for death. "Be careful, the presence is approaching us." While Li Yunmu was thinking about returning to the Imperial Palace, a black shadow attacked him from behind. An energy attack flew straight at him. Sure enough, as the system had warned, a person who wanted to assassinate Li Yunmu had appeared. What exactly was his aim though? Why was he so intent on killing him? From the time Li Yunmu had left the Western world, someone with ulterior motives had been spreading information about the decrease in his strength. What exactly was their goal though? Was it only to eliminate Scandinavia? But it shouldn't be so simple, right? The attacker's abilities were somewhat out of the ordinary, but when compared to Li Yunmu, who was a god-level expert, he was nothing much. There was a wide gap between their strengths. The attacker wasn't anyone else but the person who had come chasing after Li Yunmu from Earth to the origin world, H.A.C.K. He had waited for who knows how long to finally appear in front of Li Yunmu. The information about his enemy sustaining injuries showed up to really be false. Just as the people of Kangyu sect had said, he shouldn't have taken action before confirming the information. But he couldn't endure it and had fallen into Li Yunmu's trap. At that moment, retreating was already impossible for H.A.C.K. Since he had chosen to ride on a tiger, he could only brace himself to fight against Li Yunmu. "Who sent you?" Since you came from Earth, then I very much want to know who sent you. Li Yunmu said calmly. Cass' mask fell, and he coldly looked at Li Yunmu. This old man's homeland was destroyed by you, he shouted out furiously. No one sent me. I want to avenge my homeland. Until the day you die, I will keep trying to take revenge against you. So you are an expert from one of the parallel planes. I feel an obligation to tell you the truth, which is that I didn't want to devour your plane, but that fate didn't give me any other way. I had to choose this road to protect my family and friends, even if it forced me to devour the other planes. But even if I didn't devour them, the 66 planes would have fused together, and do you think your home plane would have been fine at that time? Li Yunmu's words startled Cass, but he still had a vicious expression on his face. With fury, he said, I don't care whether what you said is true or false. Right now, you are the person who killed my family and friends, so I cannot let you go. After hearing the firmness in the enemy's voice, Li Yunmu felt somewhat helpless. But since the situation had already developed to that point and the opponent was persisting on going about things the wrong way, he could only teach that enemy a lesson. Cass launched an extremely powerful punch which rushed toward Li Yunmu with a whistling sound. Li Yunmu was slightly startled upon seeing it. That punch could be said to be extremely overbearing, and it showed off Cass' strength. But Li Yunmu could clearly sense that the difference between his strength and Cass was gigantic. Still, the man had crossed seas and mountains to take revenge with his measly strength, which Li Yunmu found both ridiculous and somewhat sympathetic. After all, when Li Yunmu thought of himself, he had also come to the origin world disregarding everything and done many ridiculous things. He took a deep breath, then suddenly unleashed a punch with full strength. It was much more formidable compared to Cass' punch, and forced the man back. Chapter 776, No Choice Left. Cass felt as if his 5 visceras and 6 bowels had been shattered by the enemy. He sensed a warm feeling rising up his throat and spat out a mouthful of blood. His body tottered on the verge of collapse, and his consciousness began to turn somewhat fuzzy. The punch just a moment ago could be said to have contained Li Yunmu's full strength, and it had thrown Cass far away. Li Yunmu raised his fist and calmly said, I don't want to kill you. You can go. If I wanted to kill you, it would be as simple as stomping on an ant, but you aren't worth it to dirty my hands. Cass covered his chest while blood seeped out of his mouth. He bit his lip and said, If you let me go today, then you will regret it. There will definitely be a day when my appearance will signify your death. Li Yunmu looked at him calmly. You should give it your best. But now, I have a very serious problem here and want to ask you something. I hope that you can reply to me truthfully. Cass didn't back down and disdainfully said, Feel free to kill me or boil me, but if you want to pry open my mouth, you can just dream on. You want to act like a man. But I know many methods of torturing people. If you think that you can endure them, go ahead, and I will consider releasing you at the end. But if you answer my questions, I promise that I will let you go right away, and if I say so, I will definitely let you go. Upon hearing Li Yunmu's offer, Cass turned silent. Who knew what sort of torment awaited him right then? He might as well just kill himself. The moment Cass prepared to commit suicide, Li Yunmu immediately stopped him and coldly said, You intend to abandon your people and die? You think that's a good trade? Your great hatred is still unavenged, so you must continue to live on. Li Yunmu's words caused Cass' eyes turn red, and he furiously howled, I won't let you go. I know, and since you want to take revenge against me, you must keep living. Understand? If you keep seeking death, how will you take revenge against me? Am I right? All right, you almost grinned away all of my endurance. Now tell me, who sent you against me? Since you hid yourself in the origin world to assassinate me, you must have found a place to stay for some time. Tell me about it. Cass took a deep breath, suddenly feeling that Li Yunmu was correct. He had to keep on living, for only by doing so could he take his revenge. Suicide was completely meaningless. Moreover, the people who had taken him in hadn't been completely sincere toward him, so he might as well just exchange them for his life. Kangyu Sect. It's formed of experts from the parallel planes, and the reason why they came to the origin world is to get rid of you. You should know about the matter of Olympus and the 8 attacking Asgard, right? That was because of the information released by Kangyu Sect. Only because of it did Heavenly Gods Council and the 8 find a common ground and jointly attack Asgard. Li Yunmu narrowed his eyes. It seemed that it was the doing of the newly appeared intelligence organization. Ever since Underworld Serpent stopped existing, Kangyu Sect's strength had increased fiercely. But it was completely out of his expectations that it would have been formed by the powerhouses from the parallel planes he had devoured. If Underworld Serpent still existed, they would be somewhat stifled, but Underworld Serpent had disappeared, so the entire Origin World's intelligence network had fallen into the hands of Kangyu Sect. If Cass hadn't told Li Yunmu that those people were plotting against him, he would have thought of making use of their intelligence about the happenings in the Origin World. But once he learned that it was an enemy nest that was scheming to get rid of him, he couldn't just let them go. Li Yunmu went to Cass' side step by step, making Cass start to panic. Just a moment ago, he was told that he would be allowed to go, but could it be that Li Yunmu was reneging on his word? He should have known that his personal enemy should not be trusted. Li Yunmu took hold of Cass' shoulder and calmly said, "I feel like we should cooperate once. If our cooperation is successful, I will give you compensation." Cass looked up at him with fury in his eyes. "What do you mean? Are you insulting me? If you want to kill me, then go ahead. You killed my family and destroyed my world, so why are you trying to act like a good person? I am really sorry about your family, and the responsibility for their demise is indeed mine. But I am not someone wicked beyond redemption, like you imagine. I had to do it for my family. For your family, you abandoned all reason and came to take vengeance against me. I understand that, which is why you are still alive. Do you think that you can defeat me with your present strength?" Cass gulped down the saliva in his mouth. Moments ago, he could be said to have gained first-hand experience of Li Yunmu's strength, and he hadn't had any ability to retaliate. If he continued fighting with Li Yunmu, he certainly would end up as a tragic sight. Cass took a deep breath and angrily said, "Humph, do you think I believe your words?" Li Yunmu raised his head and calmly said, "Even if you don't believe it, do you have any choice in the matter? You have already told me about Kangyu Sect, so do you think you can still return to its embrace? Their intelligence network is formidable, so what do you think would happen if I let out the news that you betrayed them? Who do you think they would believe?" Cass suddenly stood up and rushed at Li Yunmu while furiously howling, "You bastard! I am only guiding you toward the only path you can take. You don't have any other choice." Cass gritted his teeth and stared rigidly at Li Yunmu. He wished that he could slice this enemy of his into pieces right there and then. But he was completely clear in his heart that he wasn't Li Yunmu's opponent, so what could be done? Li Yunmu took hold of Cass' chin and said, "I will give you a choice. Follow me, and I will help you increase your strength. Wait until you reach my level, then you can challenge me and take your revenge whenever you feel like it. At that time, even if I am killed by you, I won't complain. Given your present skill, haha, you're no more than trash in the origin world, let alone someone who can challenge me." Li Yunmu's words weren't a lie, but rather facts. Cass also understood it in his heart, but he had been corroded by hatred to the extent that he couldn't think rationally. Yet what was his enemy that stood right in front of him doing? He actually wanted to help him get revenge? What exactly was going through that man's head? When confronted with someone who had come to take revenge against him, shouldn't Li Yunmu's first action be to eliminate them quickly? Where would one find a fool like him who would help the enemy? Chapter 777, Controlling People. Li Yunmu saw the suspicion in Cass' eyes, and he squatted down before saying calmly, "I told you my conditions. If you can follow my instructions, I will help you get your revenge." Cass could not help but look at him like he was crazy. Help him get his revenge? It was simply acting like a suicidal maniac. But Cass still gulped down his saliva. The transaction seemed to be very advantageous to him. If he could stay by Li Yunmu's side, there would be a possibility to kill Li Yunmu at all times. In any case, Li Yunmu had already said that as long as Cass agreed to his conditions, he would help him get his revenge. Cass gritted his teeth and said, "Speak. What are your conditions?" Upon hearing that the enemy seemed to be ready to make some compromises with regards to his proposal, Li Yunmu curled the corners of his mouth upwards. He smiled and said, "Then I will tell you. I will tell you my conditions now. You should return to Kangyu sect and confirm that I am still heavily injured and haven't recovered yet. The reason why you weren't able to succeed was because Scandinavia was heavily guarded from inside to seal off this information. You want me to pass on false information?" "Yes," Li Yunmu calmly said. "If you don't spread this fake news, then how could I make those people who wholeheartedly want to destroy me appear in the open?" Cass suddenly felt that this enemy was truly dreadful. But if he truly stayed by his side, he was certain that he would one day find the opportunity to kill him. "I know what you really think. You feel that I am too dangerous and are wondering how you can hide by my side before getting rid of me. But the premise for all those plans is that you help me deal with this situation first. Of course, you can also choose to tell Kangyu sect that I am not injured. If they don't come to find trouble with Scandinavia, I will know that you told them the truth. I would be able to deal with that, but your plan to take revenge will become impossible then. Which path do you think is more beneficial for your revenge? If I were you, I would definitely choose the first path. Staying by your enemy's side will get you the best opportunity for revenge. Otherwise, once you leave Scandinavia, you won't ever get such a chance." Li Yunmu's words moved Cass' heart, but he still couldn't understand something. Why was Li Yunmu doing it? Could it be that placing a time bomb by his side was somehow beneficial to him? Cass paused for a moment, then said, "Although I don't know what your aim is, but since you have offered me this condition, I will follow you to one day kill you." In a cold voice, he then added, "As long as I can stay by your side for some time, I will definitely find the opportunity to kill you. At that time, you mustn't regret. The words of me, Li Yunmu, are worth 9 sacred tripods. I only hope that you yourself won't eat your words." When Cass gradually disappeared in the dark of the night, Li Yunmu heaved a sigh of relief. He hadn't expected that the powerhouses from the parallel planes would have surprisingly found him to take revenge. He had devoured the other 65 parallel planes, and he had no idea how many experts they might have had. If each and every one of them came to take revenge against him, it would be a little scary. Kangyu sect simply had to be eradicated because it was a jumbo-sized time bomb. If he didn't pay attention to it, he would definitely die a horrible death. Cass, however, wasn't that big of a threat, so he could be exploited. When Cass returned to the road, he was still thinking about Li Yunmu's words. Although he couldn't understand why his mortal enemy would help him, he could feel that Li Yunmu wasn't the heinous bastard that he had imagined. He was very intelligent and terrifying. If Cass followed him, he would feel extremely safe, while if he followed other people, he would have to live each day of his life in fear. After thinking about that, Cass hardened his heart and walked into the abyss of the night. The system inside Li Yunmu's body couldn't help but ask, "You really intend to make plans that rely on him?" Li Yunmu nodded. "I can clearly understand the thinking of these people who want to take revenge. If I appeared to be very cruel, it would only serve to strengthen their resolve to take vengeance. But since I appeared benevolent, there's a chance he will forget his hatred and even follow me to become my subordinate." When it came to using people, the system felt that Li Yunmu was very gifted in this field. Each of his followers had unswerving loyalty toward him. "This is your path to manage people. Li Yunmu took a deep breath and calmly said, "Only I am not very sure if I can use this CAS. It would depend on his performance. In truth, I am quite uncertain about it in my heart. If they don't come by tomorrow, then which seal do you intend to go for next? Right now, there are only 3 unopened seals left in the origin world." Li Yunmu paused for a moment before saying, "I still want to see the conclusion of this matter. If Zeus strikes after receiving the information from Kangyu sect, then my next target will be the Earth Seal of Olympus. If Zeus doesn't come, I will go to remove the metal seal of 2 poles of morning and evening." "You seem to be forgetting another matter," the system suddenly said. Li Yunmu frowned upon hearing that. "What matter?" "Dragon Lady's matter. You seem to have forgotten about it." Li Yunmu slapped his forehead, suddenly remembering that he wanted to change the fate of beautiful Silk's short life. Back then, the system had told him that only the heavenly grand ritual of Southern Field could change the fate of the Dragon Ladies. He recalled that he didn't have much time to complete this mission, so he immediately changed his plans and said, "That's right, if you hadn't said anything, then I would have totally forgotten about this matter. Regardless of whatever the conclusion is tomorrow, I will first proceed towards the Southern Field to get my hands on Heavenly Grand Ritual and will open the wood seal in passing." After Li Yunmu returned to his room, he found Brunhilde having waited for him for a long time. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, and Brunhilde, who hadn't seen Li Yunmu for a long time, suddenly threw him on the bed. Just when the 2 of them were intending to commit some unspeakable acts, 2 women appeared out of the ancient secret method. "Li Yunmu. You." The 2 of them were married to Li Yunmu and were his wives. So when saw him with another woman, they grew extremely angry. Previously, they had been recovering in the ancient secret method and hadn't noticed anything, but by now, they had completely healed. Speaking of which, Yuan Biao and Ling Yuan still hadn't done anything with Li Yunmu, while Brunhilde had already enjoyed the pleasures of intimacy shared by a couple a long time ago. Chapter 778, A Dispute Between 3 Women. When Li Yunmu saw the 2 women come out of the ancient secret method, he was given a fright. Upon seeing the strangers coming out of nowhere, Brunhilde couldn't help but angrily pull Li Yunmu's ear and ask, "Who are they? Are you going to give me a proper explanation for it?" Li Yunmu, whose ear was being torn apart by Brunhilde, promptly said, "Primordial spirits of the ancient secret method." "They are ancient secret method?" Brunhilde snorted and said, "Aren't the ancient secret methods treasures? How could the 2 of them turn into women?" Yuan Biao and Ling Yuan also berated Li Yunmu together. "Who is this woman on your bed? Tell us clearly. You married the 2 of us, but are surprisingly still having affairs with other women." Li Yunmu felt that he was being wronged and said helplessly, "She is my wife in Scandinavia. This is my wife from the primordial god world, and this is my wife from the devil world." Just as Li Yunmu finished speaking, the 3 women covered their mouths with their hands. Li Yunmu was scared of them that he couldn't even raise his head. It could be considered as something major happening since all 3 of them were his wives and he had no way to explain anything to them. He suddenly realized that there was still Athena, but she seemed to be much more reasonable. He then looked at the 3 vixens and saw that all of them wanted to beat him. At the sight of it, he wondered if they could fight between themselves first. Brunhilde placed her hands on her chest and coldly snorted. "Regardless of how many wives you take or what exactly is your aim behind marrying them, I will be the first. You hear me?" Li Yunmu's ear was almost been torn away by her, but Yuan Biao and Ling Yuan only looked at each other and snorted. In truth though, Ling Yuan was very grateful to Li Yunmu in her heart. If he hadn't released her from the world tree, she would still be living like a zombie. Although he wasn't Li Ying, she was still very appreciative of him. Even if he lied to her, claiming to be Li Ying to marry her, she didn't blame him for it, or else she wouldn't have exhausted her spirit energy to assist him. Yuan Biao's expression was unsightly, but she also chose to tacitly agree to it. She then turned to Brunhilde and respectfully said, "Elder sister. After hearing her address, Brunhilde finally felt much more comfortable in her heart. When Ling Yuan saw that Yuan Biao had compromised, she also didn't continue to hold her anger. Otherwise, it would make things awkward for everyone. Elder sister, she thus also greeted her. Brunhilde nodded at them, then said, since you both married Li Yunmu later, you are younger sisters. You still have one more elder sister, but she is under house arrest right now. Yuan Biao and Ling Yuan's eyes went wide in stupefaction. What? We still have one more elder sister? Their hearts were almost crushed, and Li Yunmu felt even more wronged. For a time, he didn't even dare to say anything. After seeing their accusatory looks, he smiled awkwardly. It was a strategic marriage. After hearing Li Yunmu's blurted out explanation, Yuan Biao and Ling Yuan looked at him with suspicion. It was clear that they were very dissatisfied with his explanation. For some unknown reason, Brunhilde suddenly became extremely reasonable and tenderly said, all right. Younger sisters, since you have entered Scandinavia, you will become members of Scandinavia from now on. If you encounter any difficulties in the future, you can look for elder sister at any time. Furthermore, we should make proper regulations about how to serve this guy. Since he has 4 wives now, we should be clear about the arrangement between us. Should we take turns every day or serve him together? Brunhilde's words left Yuan Biao and Ling Yuan dumbstruck. The other elder sister of yours cannot come out today, so let me accompany Li Yunmu tonight, and tomorrow one of you 2 younger sisters can take care of him. As for the 3rd day, if Athena is released, then let her serve him so as to be fair. On the 4th day, it would be the turn of the remaining younger sister. What do you think of it? Li Yunmu didn't know whether to laugh or cry after hearing Brunhilde's words. But just when Yuan Biao was thinking of saying something, Ling Yuan spoke up. I want to serve him together with Yuan Biao. Yuan Biao slapped her own forehead. Li Yunmu was already enjoying the joy of having several partners, and now they had to share him with even more women. She was quite unwilling in her heart, but the truth of it was that Brunhilde knew Li Yunmu before them, so she could only agree with the arrangement. Li Yunmu felt so embarrassed that he didn't know what to say. Still, it was meant to happen sooner or later, so it was better that his wives confronted each other now. Li Yunmu pondered it in his heart for a moment, then said to Ling Yuan and Yuan Biao, you heard your elder sister's words, so why aren't you hurrying back into the ancient secret methods? Li Yunmu winked repeatedly at them. After noticing that, Yuan Biao and Ling Yuan gave him a vicious look, then their spirits returned to the ancient secret methods. Li Yunmu heaved a sigh of relief and said to Brunhilde, you see, I told you it since the start. They are primordial spirits of the ancient secret method, and I married them not only for the sake of appearances, so you cannot continue being jealous. Brunhilde looked at Li Yunmu while beaming with smiles and said, naturally I am not angry. I am not angry at all. Brunhilde pressed Li Yunmu down while wearing a fake smile, then ruthlessly pinched his skin and said, you need a spanking, and I'll give you one. Li Yunmu grimaced in pain. Just a moment ago, Brunhilde was still acting like an elder sister, so why did she have to reveal her true appearance now? You didn't even let the spirits of the ancient secret method go. Speak, how exactly did you make them acknowledge you? Under Brunhilde's constant interrogation, Li Yunmu narrated the entire account, which caused her complexion to soften a little. Humph! I didn't expect you to have such guts. But next time, if you want to do such a thing, you must talk to me first, otherwise, I absolutely won't forgive you. Seeing Brunhilde's threatening appearance, Li Yunmu somewhat regretted marrying such a vixen. But since she had calmed down, he heaved a sigh of relief inwardly. Then, he suddenly recalled that when he was on Earth, he had promised Lin Yuero that he would marry her after he returned, so wouldn't he have to eat his words at that time? Thus, Li Yunmu smiled and said to Brunhilde, there's another matter, but I don't know if this is the right time to talk about it. Chapter 779, Caste Choice. Brunhilde curled her lips. What good matter? Tell me quickly. What is it? Li Yunmu smiled shyly and said, Right, when I return to Earth to rescue my people, I promised a young woman that when I return, I will take her as my wife. After all, she has taken great care of my father and mother. My parents are eager to have some grandchildren, so what do you think? Brunhilde's eyes went wide open, and she furiously said, Li Yunmu. You have another one. You really got great guts. See if I don't cripple you today. Li Yunmu hurriedly sat up on the bed out of fear and evaded Brunhilde's attack before saying, If you don't agree, then forget it, just don't be so scary. Brunhilde pointed at Li Yunmu with her finger while panting in rage. Tell me honestly, how many affairs do you have behind my back? Tell me everything now, for if I learn that you have hidden something from me, I will definitely kill you. Afraid, Li Yunmu swiftly said, All right, just listen to me calmly. Brunhilde's eyes went wide upon hearing him. What? Still want me to remain calm? How many are there? I will cripple you. Upon seeing Brunhilde brandishing her fangs at him, Li Yunmu tried to dodge. The night passed with them arguing peacefully. Cass had thought about everything on the journey. The conditions given by Li Yunmu were far better than the ones offered by Kangyu Sect. According to Kangyu Sect's way of doing things, they would wait until the end of time to get the result. But he couldn't wait anymore, he was an impetuous person from the start. Moreover, the people of Kangyu Sect weren't very sincere. Some of them wanted to take revenge against Li Yunmu, but some people only wanted to stand at the peak of the origin world in order to fulfill their selfish desires. They had already attained half-god level strength, while only Sect Master had become a god-level powerhouse like Li Yunmu. But when compared to ancient gods of the origin world, they weren't worth mentioning. Cass felt that if he stayed by Li Yunmu's side, he would get many opportunities to grow. After all, the strength of Kangyu Sect was limited, so how could it be easy to provoke a fight between ancient gods? Moreover, Kangyu Sect also had internal strife, which made them even more unreliable. Thus, Cass decided to follow Li Yunmu's plan and send Kangyu Sect to its doom. When H.A.C.K saw Cass return, he who had met him when he came to the origin world first, asked, You safely returned from Scandinavia. Then is Li Yunmu really injured? Did you make sufficient investigations? Cass paused for a moment before saying, Although I am not very certain, but Li Yunmu shouldn't have any combat strength. Otherwise, those Scandinavians wouldn't be guarding his residence so tightly. I couldn't find any opportunity to intrude. Despicable. Since that cunning bastard has so many people guarding him, his injuries cannot be light. If I could sneak inside, that swindler's life would definitely be mine. So it is true. He really got heavily injured in the eastern domain. H.A.C.K said happily. Cass smiled coldly. Humph, what else could it be? Why else would so many people be guarding him? I will definitely take my revenge. You don't need to worry, Kangyu Sect has already set a plan and was only waiting for your intelligence. Since you could return safely, Li Yunmu must be seriously injured. He cannot even hold a blade to kill people who are conspiring against him. Seems like his situation is already beyond cure. So what should we do now? Is it possible to sneak into his residence? Leaving aside the fact whether we can or cannot break the strict defense, there's also Li Yunmu's wife Brunhilde with her godly spear. She won't be easy to deal with. Li Yunmu had to reveal some information to Cass, so that Cass could obtain complete trust from Kangyu Sect. Seems like you encountered that Valkyrie in Scandinavia. Cass took a deep breath. There was no direct confrontation. She was very powerful, so I ran away without fighting her. My goal is revenge and not to throw my life away. I cannot die until I make sure that the bastard Li Yunmu is dead. H.A.C.K smiled at hearing his words. I will report to the sect leader that the news about Li Yunmyu being seriously injured is true. I believe that even without us attacking, Li Yunmyu will still be dealt with. Cass frowned. Who do you think can help us get rid of Li Yunmyu? Isn't it better to rely on ourselves? If you all don't want to assist me, then I will go by myself. Upon seeing Cass about to act recklessly again, H.A.C.K calmly said, "Don't be impulsive, sect leader is already unhappy that you went to Scandinavia alone. But you returned with a very important news, so it can be considered as making amends. Don't be so impulsive in the future. Our Kangyu sect only has one goal, and it is to get rid of Li Yunmyu. So you should listen to the arrangements." Cass snorted coldly. "I don't care about all that. I brought back the information for you all, so you're responsible for attracting Scandinavia's guards. If you don't want to go, then I will kill Li Yunmyu by myself." Cass left without any explanation again, not letting H.A.C.K persuade him to stay. The man sighed in regret, then went to inform Sect Master. H.A.C.K met with Kangyu Sect's Sect Master and said with a smile, "Sect Master, I have some news." Cass returned and brought some important news. "Oh." Kangyu Sect's Sect Master became attentive. He was eager to know whether Li Yunmyu was injured or not. It was extremely important for his plan. Li Yunmyu is seriously injured and is being protected by many Scandinavians. I guess he received some serious injury in the eastern domain. Where is Cass? I want to talk to him personally. H.A.C.K shook his head. Cass' temperament is too stubborn and out of control. It would be better if we... Kangyu Sect's Sect Master waved his hand and said, "Follow him. He only wants revenge, which we can also understand. His words shouldn't be wrong since he wants Li Yunmyu dead more than anyone else. I can feel that from his actions. Then what should we do now, Sect Master? Let's go and send this information to Zeus in Olympus. We cannot kill Li Yunmyu by ourselves." Chapter 780, The Start of the Plan. "Yes. Subordinate will follow." H.A.C.K quickly retreated, then prepared to leave for Olympus. The people of Olympus were waiting for information from Kangyu Sect, and now H.A.C.K could finally bring such an important piece of intelligence. Who knew whether Zeus would become the knife for Kangyu Sect which would get rid of Li Yunmyu? When Zeus heard the news, he burst out laughing. He had been waiting just for such an opportunity. Li Yunmyu had received serious injuries, and the eight were recuperating from heavy losses they had suffered in the last war. At that moment, only Heavenly God's Council had the power to capture Scandinavia. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Zeus. There had never been problems with Kangyu Sect's intelligence, so Zeus naturally believed it wholeheartedly. Thus, he commanded Heavenly God's Council to charge towards Scandinavia. He wanted to destroy it in one fell swoop and raise his own prestige in the world. Kangyu Sect was perfectly happy with that outcome. As long as Zeus took action, Li Yunmyu, who was seriously injured and didn't have any combat strength, would be exterminated together with Scandinavia. Even if Li Yunmyu luckily managed to escape, Kangyu Sect could hunt him down themselves. Li Yunmyu wouldn't have a single peaceful day in his life again. That was Kangyu Sect's plan. The previous time, they had helped the Eight in Olympus to ally to attack Scandinavia in order to make Li Yunmyu appear. However, Li Yunmyu didn't appear, which caused Kangyu Sect to lose hope. They then felt even more helpless when the gods of Olympus surprisingly changed sides and thwarted their plan. No more mistakes could be allowed to happen. Zeus was going to launch the attack by himself, and he couldn't cower. After H.A.C.K returned, he went to the Sect Master of Kangyu Sect to report the situation. Sect Master was very excited by the news. He wanted to have a good look at how Li Yunmyu would die. He only cared about that single point. He had been enduring for a long time. His aim had been the same as Cass from the beginning to the end. All he ever wanted was to see Li Yunmyu die. He was getting closer to that moment, which elated him. Kangyu Sect could finally rise in the origin world. Cass, who had already left Kangyu sect, had his own plans. Li Yunmu had told him that if he chose to follow his suggestion, he had to leave Kangyu sect straight away. Otherwise, when the battle concluded and Kangyu sect's people discovered that the intelligence they received was wrong, they would immediately go looking for him. So with Cass' safety in mind, Li Yunmu had warned him to evacuate once the plan succeeded. Right then, Cass was moving towards Scandinavia, but not to take his revenge. He wanted to complete the final part of his deal with Li Yunmu. By then, he had already done the most important part of the plan. It was tantamount to the whole matter being completely settled. Given Li Yunmu's strength, he would definitely catch the entire Kangyu sect in one fell swoop. And by doing so, Cass obtained the chance to stay by Li Yunmu's side, which would give him a chance to kill Li Yunmu at any time. It was his only goal. Scandinavia was under heavy guard, but not in order to match Cass' information, but because Li Yunmu predicted that a huge battle was on the verge of breaking out. It might even be large enough to alter the structure of the origin world itself. That was Li Yunmu's true goal all along. He destroyed the devil and god worlds in the ancient lands of Eastern Domain, so now that he returned to the Western region, he wanted to become the master of everything. What Kangyu sect, what Olympus, and the Eight, they were nothing more than fleeting clouds in his eyes. Li Yunmu had the self-confidence to stand at the peak of the Western world. He was confident that the two poles of morning and evening wouldn't have any thoughts of attacking him. After all, he had helped them unite. Such kindness was enough to make them capitulate in front of him. At that moment, Li Yunmu was walking around the imperial palace of Scandinavia. Some distance away, a guard stopped Cass at the gate, and Cass calmly said, "I am here to see Li Yunmu. How could our emperor's son-in-law meet with anyone who wants to meet him? Get lost." Li Yunmu heard the berating voice of the guard and walked over to check what was going on. Upon coming closer, he saw that Cass had returned as scheduled. His actions were very quick when choosing Li Yunmu's side, and Li Yunmu felt very satisfied by it. He waved his hand at the guards. "Stay your hand. He has come to see me." When the guards heard Li Yunmu's command, they didn't dare to continue staying around and inviting embarrassment for themselves and retreated. Li Yunmu crossed his hands behind his back and said with a smile, "It seems you have thought through everything. I felt that your words were right. It would be impossible for me to take revenge if I kept following those people of Kangyu sect, but if I stay with you, I will have many opportunities." Upon hearing Cass' words, Li Yunmu took a deep breath and said, "It seems your desire for revenge is very great. Since you helped me in this matter, I will give you the opportunity to take revenge. Beginning from this moment, you can follow me. I will also find someone to help you increase your cultivation. Whenever you feel that you possess enough strength to take revenge against me, you can come find me at any time. Naturally, you can also choose to assassinate me, that depend on you." Cass felt like Li Yunmu had a mental disorder after hearing his words. Which person would keep a ticking time bomb which was certain to explode by his side? Could it be that he really wasn't afraid of death? Cass knew that Li Yunmu was very powerful, but was he really not afraid that he might end up assassinated one day? Why was he so confident in himself? Li Yunmu smiled at him. "You don't need to look at me like that. I know what you are thinking. But since I agreed to your request, I won't renege on this deal." Cass was left speechless by Li Yunmu's confidence. Especially when Li Yunmu took him along and even found Thunder God Thor to help him become stronger. It seemed that Li Yunmu was truly crazy. He unexpectedly decided to nurture his mortal foe, and Cass was more than willing to bear any hardships. He would do anything to take his revenge. Li Yunmu couldn't help but shake his head when his expectations were surpassed and looked at Cass working hard to increase his cultivation. He inwardly sighed. Revenge seems to be his only impetus. In order to take revenge, he will do anything that he needs to do.